This is a crew-only door. Step back.
I'm crew. Here's my airline ID and my known crew member credential.
Anybody can buy a costume online, show me a real ID.
That is a real ID, officer. I'm due at the aircraft now. You're not flying anything today, hands behind your back. Then you'd better call the airline day, because I'm the captain of the flight you're delaying.
At 6:42 a.m. on a Tuesday, an airport police officer put handcuffs on a 27-year airline captain at his own crew checkpoint, called his four-stripe uniform a costume, and held him for 31 minutes while a full flight sat at the gate. He thought the captain was an imposter. Within 72 hours, the officer's badge was gone, and the airport authority was drafting a settlement for $6 million. Before we go further, where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments. I read them. And if this is your first time here, hit subscribe. We cover one thing on this channel: what happens when power meets accountability. One note before the story: everything you're about to hear is a composite built from documented patterns across real civil rights detention and failure to supervise cases. The names, the airport, and the figures are illustrative. The pattern they're built from is not. Officer Kyle Brandt was 3 years into the job, assigned to the crew checkpoint at Concourse C of Meridian International Airport. His file already told a story. 2 prior complaints sat in his record, both for the same thing: challenging credentialed crew members at that exact door and refusing to accept valid airline IDs. A supervisor had recommended a refresher on the airport's known crew member verification protocol. The recommendation was logged, then shelved. The unit was short-staffed that quarter. Brandt met the minimum standard. He kept the post. Then, one Tuesday morning, the captain came through his door. His name was David Okonkwo. He was 54 years old, 27 years flying, a line check airman, and the assigned captain of Flight 1142, a 6:55 a.m. departure with 180 passengers booked. He wore the 4 stripes, carried a current airline ID, a federal known crew member credential, and his flight paperwork. To a 3-year officer who decided the matter before he asked the question, it all looked like a disguise. It was March 11th, a Tuesday, 6:39 a.m. The crew door at Concourse C is a secured threshold. Every credentialed pilot and flight attendant badges through it hundreds of times a year. Okonkwo had badged through that same door for the better part of a decade. Brandt had rotated onto the post that week. He had never seen Okonkwo. He saw a man he didn't recognize trying to enter a secure area in what he decided was a bought uniform. His body cam was already recording. Brandt stepped in front of the door. Okonkwo offered his airline ID, then his known crew member credential, then his flight release with his own name printed on it. The footage shows Brandt never scanning a single one. When Okonkwo pointed to the verification scanner mounted on the wall beside them, the device built to confirm exactly this, Brandt waved it off and ordered him to step back. The captain never got to badge through his own door. For 3 years, Kyle Brandt's job had been to verify the people who keep that concourse moving. He was about to turn a 30-second scan into a federal lawsuit, and he had no idea the man in front of him was the only person at that gate licensed to fly the aircraft. From here, the timeline tightens fast. 6:41 a.m. Okonkwo asked, twice, that Brandt simply scan the credential in his hand. The body cam caught the answer cleanly, that the captain wasn't flying anything today. By 6:42, 2 things were happening that Brandt couldn't see. A gate agent 40 feet away had started filming on her phone, and a supervisor's voice came over Brandt's radio, telling him to run the credential before he did anything else. Quick gut check, because this is the hinge of the whole case. When an officer has a working scanner 2 feet away and a credential in his hand, should refusing to use it cost him the badge? Yes or no? Drop it in the comments before you hear what he did. He didn't scan it. At 6:42 a.m., Brandt cuffed the captain of Flight 1142 against the corridor wall, in front of the gate agent's camera, while 180 passengers waited at the jet bridge. The gate agent's video would clear 5 million views before the day was out. The cuffs came off within a few minutes. The supervisor arrived, scanned the credential Brandt had refused to touch, and it cleared instantly. But the damage was already done. Okonkwo had blown his duty window. Under federal rules, he couldn't be rushed back into the cockpit after that. The airline scrambled a reserve captain. Flight 1142 pushed back 94 minutes late. Okonkwo never raised his voice. Witness statements later filed with the court record one instruction from him as the cuffs came off. that the corridor camera footage be preserved. Then he walked to the crew room and called his union and the airline's legal line before the reserve captain even reached the gate. By 9 a.m., the airport authorities council knew. By noon, the body cam footage was locked. By the end of the day, Kyle Brandt was on administrative leave. Internal affairs took 4 weeks. It wasn't complicated. There was body cam footage, the gate agent's video, 2 corroborating witness statements, and a radio log showing a supervisor telling Brandt to run the credential at 6:42 a.m. According to the Internal Affairs report, investigators sustained 3 violations: unlawful detention, failure to follow established credential verification protocol, and failure to obey a lawful order from a supervisor. Then the report surfaced the thing that turned one officer's stop into an airport authority problem. This was the 3rd complaint against Brandt for the same conduct in 3 years. The first 2, both for refusing valid crew credentials at that door, were still sitting unreviewed in a supervisor's queue on the morning he reached for those cuffs. The shelved protocol refresher. The 2 open complaints. None of it acted on. Brandt was terminated the day the report closed. By then, the authorities' exposure had stopped being about him. If you've made it this far, you already see where the real failure sits. Subscribe so the next case finds you. We put one of these out every week. Okonkwo didn't sue Kyle Brandt for a single bad morning. He sued the airport authority for the system that kept Brandt at that door. The complaint, filed about 10 weeks after the incident, ran 3 counts. Count 1, unlawful seizure under the 4th Amendment. Through 42 U.S.C. Section 1983, the detention and cuffing without cause. Count 2, First Amendment retaliation, the escalation that sharpened after Okonkwo asserted his credentials and his right to the scan. Count 3, the expensive one, a Manel claim against the authority itself, not for what one officer did, but for the pattern, the 2 unreviewed complaints, the shelved protocol refresher, that made the harm foreseeable. Here's why that count carried the number. An individual officer can raise qualified immunity. A documented failure to supervise record is far harder for a public authority to wave away when the paper trail is sitting in its own files. The authorities' lawyers watched the same footage everyone else had. They settled. The settlement closed about 15 months after that Tuesday. $6 million, with roughly $2 million earmarked for reform. And that figure is an illustrative composite. In real litigation, a documented failure to supervise record drives the number far more than a brief detention does. But the money was never the story. The agreement specified non-monetary terms, and those outlived the check. The authority made credential scanning mandatory before any crew detention. It set a same-week review window for officer complaints. It put the 2 stalled complaints against Brandt into the record that should have caught them years earlier. The officers who'd skipped the protocol were retrained. Kyle Brandt never wore the badge again. And the crew door at Concourse C still has a scanner mounted on the wall, the one that would have ended the whole thing in 30 seconds if anyone had used it. This is what these stories are actually about. Not one officer having a bad morning. A system that saw the warnings in 2 open complaints and a shelved refresher, and chose every single time to look away. The handcuffs were Brandt's. The failure was the authorities'. If you believe stories like this matter, if you believe a man shouldn't have to prove he's real while holding the credential that proves it, hit subscribe. We're documenting the patterns the system would rather file under unfounded, one case at a time. New one next week. We'll see you there.